I'm here with Gabe Kahane, composer, singer, songwriter, cook, talking about your upcoming concert at Interval, November 17th.
At the Issue Project Room.
Yes. And we wanted to have this informal conversation because the way that this concert came together had a lot of back and forth.
It did indeed.
And the reason being is because Interval works where Mata allows a curator to decide what's going to be on a concert. And you came up with a very unusual pairing. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. The idea is to juxtapose a commissioned song cycle from 9 young composers, all under 40, composers writing specifically for a singing pianist, in this case me, which is to say that rather than an accompanist and a singer, both of those roles are being performed by one person. And to juxtapose that with Schumann's song cycle Dichterliebe, which I'm also going to be performing from the piano, which I assume is somewhat unusual. And of course, this created a little bit of a controversy, between Mata and me, because Mata is very specifically committed to supporting the work of composers under 40, and Schumann is quite dead. Three times over 40.
Was he under 40 when he
wrote
it?
I think he was under 40. I think it was written in 39, or is it Opus 39?
And he wrote it in about 9 days, if I'm not mistaken.
Very quickly.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
16 songs.
16 songs. Well, there are actually 4 more
that
are cut from the published version. But I think it's quite whole in the edition that we have now. And for me, there are 2 issues to be discussed. There's the question of my sort of programmatic intent with pairing music by Schumann and music by these living composers, of which you are one. And then on the other hand, there's this larger question of how do we deal with programming in the 21st century. And
right, because one of our arguments or conversations was about are we including classical music, safe music, known music as an excuse, as a way of appeasing an audience, a way of saying, sorry for presenting you with this difficult contemporary music, here's a bit of a comfort food for you.
Or on the other hand, is it about committing with real integrity to the idea of constructing an intergenerational narrative? And I think that in all of the arts, there's always a kind of intertextual dialogue going on. And I think that the danger that's run often in the new music community is a kind of self-ghettoizing behavior, where if the institution feels neglected by the mainstream, there's this decision to completely shun what is either old or canonic, and so on and so forth. And it's very important to me to be in dialogue with the past, never at the expense of the present, but I really genuinely believe that in most cases, if the programming is intelligent, both musics will be enhanced, and the whole will be greater than the sum of their parts. When we juxtapose, say, a John Adams big symphonic work with a Mahler symphony, or a Thomas Addis symphonic work with a Beethoven symphony, yes, there may be something cynical and bottom-liney about it, where we need to sell a certain number of tickets. But I also think that for a conductor of the intelligence of someone like Simon Rattle, I think he's very, very deliberate when he's choosing what new music to pair with what music from the repertoire. And I think we spoke before about the sort of food analogy, that neither of us, as much as we love steak, wants to eat a meal of 3 steaks. Right. Which is to say, we don't want a program of 3 Mahler symphonies, or we don't want to hear 3 Schumann or Schubert song cycles back to back to back. And neither are we vegans and we're not going to go eat, buttered seitan with, weird forest.
Well, not to disparage vegans in any way.
I mean, I'm okay with disparaging vegans. I don't have a problem with that. That's another conversation for another interview. But
what is your... How do you defend your choice
in this case,
specifically the Schumann cycle?
So in this case, what I'm interested in the idea of the performer who is taking on multiple roles at once. I'm speaking in slightly abstract theoretical terms. What I mean is someone who's playing an instrument and singing at the same time. Just something that I think for the last 4 decades we've associated very heavily with the singer-songwriter tradition, with the rock and roll tradition. And I'm interested in the idea both of reconnecting that practice to the 19th century, when it was in fact quite common. You have people like Ronaldo Hahn, the composer and songwriter who was Proust's lover. He was famous in Paris for writing quite beautiful art songs, some of which are still in the repertoire today. And he would charm the ladies by singing his songs from the piano. He was quite a gifted pianist and singer, and would charm the pants off of them and then go sleep with Proust.
And your point being?
No, my point being that and as well as, Schubert was also a very fine singer, and that I think the salon tradition of the 1830s, 1840s, the middle of the 19th century, is much more similar to, downtown pop venues like Rockwood Music Hall, where people have a beer in hand and someone is strumming and singing. Much more similar to that than hearing a lieder recital in a concert hall. Not to say that the quality of the music is the same, but I think the gestalt of the experience, the sort of social element meeting the musical element, has much more in common with our pop practices today. So the idea then of including this Schumann cycle is by juxtaposing Schumann's work specifically because there are, quite frankly, beautiful pop songs in that score. Of course, the voice leading is unimpeachable, and the melodies are stunning, and the harmony is stunning. But when you get down to it, some of those songs, Ich scrolle nicht, is basically a pop song.
I can see that.
And, a pop song to the point where Cole Porter in Kiss Me Kate wrote So in Love, which is not just a paraphrase musically, but a paraphrase lyrically.
And do you refer to it as a pop song because of its really straightforward nature, its adherence to really very few ideas, its repetition? Why?
Well, even just texturally, when you look at this piano part,
it's not a piano part that's really concerned with counterpoint or...
No, and it's very much, if you played it, with the right groove and in the right tempo, it would sound like an 80s power ballad. That's basically what I'm saying. Of course... Not
that you would do that. You're not going
No.
that.
I'm not trying to make any, Glenn Gouldian ideological points by playing things badly or imposing myself onto the music. But rather that these distinctions between highbrow and lowbrow, and is it concert music, is it pop music, by creating this sort of 3-course meal of my songs, which kind of blur this line, and then these 9 commissioned songs from very serious composers, which are being written specifically for singing pianists, and then performing the Schumann cycle from the piano in the way that I would perform pop songs.
So you will approach it from you will approach singing the cycle from a different perspective than, say, Thomas Allen singing it or Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. You're singing it with a different kind of approach.
Well,
not a standard classical approach.
I think. Thank you, Yotam. I think I'm still working out technically how I'm going to sing all of this material, my own material, the commissioned songs, and the Schumann. I think ultimately I want to find a unified vocal production or as unified as it is in my own music, which is to say that I exploit different colors and different modes of vocal production in my own music. And similarly with the Schumann, I'm interested in singing that piece in a way that's consistent with how I sing generally, which is not to say that I'm going to be, scooping into notes and hamming it up and turning it into pop songs, but rather that the whole gesture of the concert is basically to say, here is a man at a piano singing music that was written 150 years ago, in the last 2 months, and over the last few years in my music. And when these things are juxtaposed with the same frame, the sort of control group, as it were, being all of this music is being performed by one person at one instrument, do those distinctions begin to slip away? Because inevitably there are instances where, in my own music, the harmony and rhythm is much more sophisticated, not necessarily better, but more sophisticated than in Schumann. But if I play this music in a rock club, is it somehow less than the Schumann cycle or the Schubert cycle that's performed at Wigmore Hall by Ian Bostridge with, Julius Drake at the piano? So I think that's ultimately the sort of polemic that I'm proposing, or the ideological question that I'm proposing, is by juxtaposing this music and unifying the way that it's performed, can we do away with all of these distinctions? And I think that, in a way, the question has more to do with the distinctions that we draw between popular music and concert music, and that Schumann is actually just a very convenient sort of exhibit for working through that problem. And I don't really know what the answer is, and I think that this concert provides a really wonderful testing ground.